Christopher Bell wins one of the shortest races of this NASCAR season, and should Kyle Larson receive a playoff waiver for choosing to run the Indy 500 over NASCAR? Let's talk about everything that happened in a rain-shortened Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte. Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about NASCAR's Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway, one of NASCAR's crown jewel, most prestigious events of the season. It was unfortunately rain shortened. We'll talk about Kyle Larson attempting to run the double, but unfortunately only got to run the Indianapolis 500. And of course we'll talk about Christopher Bell getting his second win of the season and how big of a deal that is as well. Let's break down everything that happened in a sort of unfortunate greatest day in racing, right? We started off with Monaco, Leclerc, breaking the Monaco curse. Great for him. Then we move over to the Indy 500, have the rain delay, the big giant storm that come through, had the long rain delay. Started a little bit before the Coke 600. The Coke 600 started around halfway the Indy 500. And then really unfortunate, the Coke 600, NASCAR's longest prestigious event, will only go 374 miles instead of the scheduled 600. One of the shortest races of the NASCAR season this year so far, especially at 1.5 miles. So it might be the shortest race distance-wise, besides Martinsville, I believe. But just a really unfortunate circumstance with the weather all day long. And we'll talk about that. First thing I want to discuss is Kyle Larson, and should he get a playoff waiver. Before I talk about Christopher Bell getting the rain shortened win, before I talk about NASCAR shortening the race, before I talk about the playoffs, the finish results, all that, I want to talk about Kyle Larson because that was one of the main storylines today. They showed him flying into Charlotte. They showed him, getting off the helicopter, riding into his pit box, ready to get into the race. Unfortunately, as soon as he got to the track, that's when the rain hit and we had the rain delay. We never went back going. But Kyle Larson, should he receive a playoff waiver? And I don't know if I really want to put my opinion in, but I will say this. The reasoning, from what I understand, the NASCAR has the rule to make the playoffs. You have to start every race, is because they don't want you sort of skipping races to potentially rest or potentially go race another series. So obviously Kyle Larson decided to race another series. Just keep that in mind. From what I understand, that was the whole point of the rule. So obviously if a driver gets suspended, NASCAR's granted waivers for that, which I sort of understand. And that NASCAR wants to punish the driver by making them have to sit out, miss sponsorship opportunities, miss the potential points they could gain, but they don't want to take them out of contention for the playoffs. Understand that side of it. Also, the injury side of it, I totally understand as well. There's been some controversy whether it's okay if it's an injury in NASCAR, do you get a waiver? If it's out of NASCAR, do you get a waiver? We can talk about that all day. But really, should Kyle Larson get a waiver? And I really don't have a clear-cut answer, because from what I look, if I understand the rules completely clear, I would say he shouldn't get a playoff waiver. But then at the same time, this is a driver with 2 wins this season. Obviously, he was leading the points going into today. I don't know. We'll have to see what NASCAR does. I'm almost 100% positive. I'm 95% positive he's going to get one. But I didn't like the decision from Kyle Larson to skip the Coca-Cola 600 and race the Indy 500 personally. I understand he has the right to, do what he wants to do personally. I totally respect what he did, but I just really don't like the situation. The Coca-Cola 600, you have fans going to cheer you on, Kyle Larson fans going to a NASCAR event to cheer on the NASCAR driver who's leading the points at the time. Denny Hamlin's now the points leader, by the way. So Kyle Larson did give up that points lead, which pays big dividends. I mean, Kyle Larson is potentially taking himself, or giving himself, a disadvantage when you look at the points, when you look at making the championship 4, winning a NASCAR Cup Series championship, and I just don't like it personally from the NASCAR side of it. And maybe that's just because I'm really biased towards NASCAR. Personally, I didn't like the decision to skip the Coke 600, one of NASCAR's prestigious venues. This isn't like an all-star race or a regular race on the schedule, like a typical race. This is the Coke 600, one of NASCAR's 4 crown jewel events on the schedule. So I didn't like it. I really didn't like the decision. A few things we have to talk about: the rain-shortened race. A lot of people have been posting pictures online about the track being dry. From what we understand, which is unfortunate too. From what we understand, NASCAR couldn't dry the track because it was too humid. They were, maybe the race would have started at after 12 o'clock, 12:30, maybe closer to 1 o'clock. Can we race at 2, 3 in the morning? I don't know. That's sort of another frustrating call, because you wait around for the rain delay started at 9:30. NASCAR called the race at 11:30. So you wait around for 2 hours expecting to get the race going. I'm sure a large amount of, over 100,000 people were at this race. A large amount of fans were probably staying, hanging around the Charlotte area, ready for the race to resume. I know a lot of people were watching on TV, ready for this race to resume. So many good storylines, too. I mean, we had Tyler Reddick coming up through the field. Can he get to the win? Brad Keselowski's car was really coming alive. And then, of course, with the track change completely completely, was that going to shake up things a little bit? Because that brings somebody, that we didn't see in the day portion of the race sort of shoot up there and win. Just a really unfortunate circumstance. And I'm not going to try to bash NASCAR for making this decision. I don't see what the track is. I don't know how hard it is to drive this racetrack. NASCAR is professionals at that. But it's an unfortunate situation, to say the least. And I'm sort of upset after today. I'll be honest. I'm sort of disappointed. Today was kind of a letdown. This is one of my favorite days of the year. It's Christmas for motorsports, greatest day in racing, and it just felt a little off this year. So I'll say that. But we do have a lot to talk about regarding the results of this race. And let's go ahead and talk about Christopher Bell getting the win, his second win of the season, and his first Coca-Cola 600 win. Big win for Christopher Bell. And not only is this a big win because, one, the Coca-Cola 600 is a massive win down on your resume, one of the crown jewels. I believe this is Christopher Bell's first crown jewel win, by the way, which is really big for him as well. But also, he's been on a slump, and not really, he's been slow or he's been, making mistakes himself. He's really been caught up in some serious bad luck. I mean, the wreck at Talladega, a few wrecks after that. Martinsville had massive issues. The last few weeks have been really rough on Christopher Bell, not getting a whole lot of points. Christopher Bell got 67 points tonight. The max you can get is 70 in the Coca-Cola 600. Great showing for Christopher Bell getting the win tonight. Huge win. I'm sure this is going to boost his momentum, give him some more playoff points heading into the playoffs. Once again, Christopher Bell's made the Final Four 2 years in a row now, looking for 3 in a row, and certainly having a solid night tonight. So congratulations to Christopher Bell. Ran a really good race, was sort of dominant in the day portion of the race. I guess William Byron was probably the fastest car at the start of the race, and then of course, Christopher Bell sort of came up there a little bit later on, was able to get by him. There in the later stage of the race, Ty Gibbs was fast at the very beginning of the race and it switched to Byron. Then Bell car, of course, was coming alive, and then it was Brad Keselowski trying to catch him, but obviously the rain started to fall and the race was ultimately rain shortened after only 250 laps, 249 laps complete. I do have my big three drivers that I did decide to pick out for this race. Really hard to decide because so much was changing as this race. So one of the big characteristics of this race is the changing track conditions. And obviously, Christopher Bell was doing a great job throughout the race, led a bunch of laps. I believe he led the most laps tonight. I put Brad Keselowski on here because he was obviously catching Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell was using a little bit of dirty air to try to block him there, but a few more laps in this race, if we got to the end of that third stage, Brad Keselowski was going to have a high chance of getting by him and winning 2 races in a row. Unfortunately, Brad Keselowski has to settle for that second place finish. And then, of course, I want to put Byron in the third spot just because, for one, he finished in the third position. So I'm going to go top 3 here, which I've done a couple of times this season on my top 3 drivers of the race. But William Byron also was just so fast at the earlier stages of the race. He was definitely fading a little bit, but I didn't see enough out of Reddick. I didn't see enough out of Hamlin. Gibbs was fading too quickly to put them as the top 3 cars or drivers of the race. And that sort of brings us into our top 10. Like I said, Tyler Reddick was fast. He had to serve a pass-through penalty at the start of this race for failing inspections. Unfortunately, just didn't have enough time to get back up to the field. Was actually a lap down for a long time. Luckily, at the end of one of the stages, was able to take the waiver out, get back on the lead lap, and of course, get all the way up to the 4th position. But with the rain, just sort of cut his day short a little bit there. Once again, this was a fairly short run, 373 miles, which is a little bit shorter than the typical 400-mile race we're used to seeing. And then obviously, we didn't even get close to the 600-mile mark. Denny Hamlin was solid all day. I mean, Denny Hamlin was top 5, top 10 all day long, but never really saw him crack the lead or look like he had winning speed. But a solid run for Denny Hamlin in the 11 car, also having a really solid season as well in that Toyota team. Was having trouble on pit road actually with Chris Buescher, which was sort of interesting. They were sort of beefing on pit road, backing up in the stall, turning sideways in the stall. We've seen that before in the past, but we haven't really seen that recently with the next gen cars. At least it hasn't been on the broadcast. I haven't seen that much with Denny Hamlin. Some really heated discussion there. Sure, they'll talk about it. They were actually working together to try to fix the problem on pit road, which was really interesting to watch as well. Well, they were trying to, have Chris Buescher pit a little front forward. They were trying to have Denny Hamlin pit, a little farther back. And then obviously that causes problems for everybody else on pit road because they're all stacked together, which was certainly an interesting situation to watch there. Ty Gibbs, interesting performance for Ty Gibbs, was able to start on pole for I believe his first career pole, led the early stages of the race, but as the sun set a little bit, we got the cooler track temperatures. The 54 Toyota faded just a little bit, but once again, there was so much racing left. I mean, Ty Gibbs could have found a way to come back up to the field. Just really unfortunate that we didn't get to see it, and I'm going to keep saying that. Chase Elliott in the 7th position, your Xfinity race winner on Saturday. Solid run for the 9 car. Chase Elliott, once again, has been very consistent over the last couple of seasons. It was sort of, he was sort of, underrated or underestimated last season with finishing good because he was so far behind due to injury. But once again, he was consistent last year, has been really consistent for a majority of this season as well, finishing the 7th position for Elliott. Ross Chastain, a solid 8th place finish following following this race. Sort of another top 10 for Ross Chastain, which is really good for him. Alex Bowman, who's also been really consistent. The one thing about Alex Bowman, yeah, he hasn't won in 2 years. He hasn't won since, it's been a long time. It's been since early 2022 at Las Vegas, like the third race of that year in 2022. But Alex Bowman, you can count on him for being consistent, and you can count on him for making the playoffs in most situations. You know, last year there was injury involved. It was a wild season last year for Bowman, but you can count on him making the playoffs. You can, potentially count on him finishing the top 10 week in and week out. So Bowman once again in the top 10. Josh Berry, really solid day for Josh Berry in the 4-car. A little bit of strategy to gain some track position, but that team did have the speed all day long. And Josh Berry, he's been getting some solid results lately. Somebody that started out the year really slow. You remember last year race for Hendrick, finished second. Obviously this driver has talent and was able to get a solid top 10 finish tonight in one of NASCAR's Crown Jewel events. So certainly congratulations to Josh Berry. A few notable finishes, of course, is Justin Allgaier, who raced for Kyle Larson, actually finished in the 13th position. We had Kyle Busch finishing in the 15th position, something to note there as well. So let's take a quick look at the playoff grid. We are now past halfway in the regular season, so the playoff grid's starting to tighten up a little bit. You're starting to get a feel for where everybody's at. I'm going to leave Kyle Larson on the playoff grid as I pull it up now, because I'm certain he's going to get the playoff waiver. If not, we'll make the necessary adjustments to the grid. But I think this is going to be the current playoff grid. Obviously, Truex is guaranteed. I think Truex is second in points right now. He's essentially guaranteed in. He's going to make the playoffs. Not worried about Truex. Ty Gibbs is obviously having a really solid season. Obviously going to make the playoffs as well if things continue to go the way they are. Bowman, Chastain safely in. Ryan Blaney had a rough day today. Unfortunately, had a little bit of trouble. Got caught up in the wall early on in the race. Couldn't finish the race today. You had Bubba Wallace, who actually had a decent day. Got a few stage points today. Bubba Wallace puts him 21 above Kyle Busch. Chris Buescher still really close on that cut line. Those are two drivers I expect to make above the cut line. I don't expect Kyle Busch, especially Kyle Busch. I don't expect Chris Buescher, who's been running very well the recent weeks, to not make the playoffs. So the fact that they're on the grid is certainly concerning. Chase Briscoe had trouble tonight. It's a disastrous night in a high points paying race. Unfortunately, falls 11 points below the cut line. He was above going into this race, I believe. Joey Logano still 30 points out, just like last week. Just no speed from Joey Logano. Not seen top 10 speed, top 15 speed most weeks, and definitely not winning speed. Joey Logano is going to have to get things back together. He did win the All-Star race, which was sort of strange, but going to have to get things back together on that 22 team, because something is just not there. Ryan Blaney's way quicker right now than Joey Logano. Josh Berry sort of sneaking up in there in the 19th spot now in points. Unfortunately, he's 82 points out, so he's going to have a lot of work to do. It's going to be really tough to get there. And then Austin Cindric, 96 points out as well. Wanted to talk about that. We did have a few crashes in this race. Noah Gragson, unfortunately, his top 15 streak will end. It was a pretty solid top 15 streak he had going. Slammed to the inside wall. Corey LaJoie caught up in some trouble as well. And then, of course, I mentioned Ryan Blaney, last year's Coca-Cola 600 winner, the 2023 winner of the Coca-Cola 600, had trouble as well. Slammed into the wall. Tried to fix that car on pit road, just couldn't quite get the damage fixed, which is certainly a really disappointing situation there. And that's really it. That's really all there's to talk about following this year's Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte. Once again, I'm a little disappointed following this race, so sorry if I was a little down. I'm just today didn't live up to my expectations, which is why I'm a little on the downside. But that's it. That's all there is to talk about. Of course, please like and subscribe if you like the video. If you do, I really appreciate it. And of course, about Kyle Busch finishing 15th today, let's get rowdy.